microphone and video thing back.
Quit messing with your computer. Just kidding. It's messing with your mind, Shane. It's messing with your mind.
Oh, we're recording.
Okay.
We're good.
Okay, we're ready to go. Anine Boujou, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the special RTC meeting today, which is, help me out, what's our date today? September 21st. September's almost gone. Oh my gosh, came by fast. Minogajib, and we will call the meeting to order. But first, we will call the meeting to order at 9:11 a.m. As always, we start our meetings out in a good way. I have Vernon Adams, our spiritual advisor, here to give the invocation. So Vern. Okay, we can get started. Roll call, please. Miigwech, Vern.
Kathy Chavers,
Here.
Shane Drift,
Come on, here.
Tara Gishik,
Here.
Travis Morrison,
Here.
and Robert Moyer.
Okay. Next, we will have approval of the agenda.
I think the only thing we were going to add was Tracy Dagan.
Oh, yeah. We'll put her after Fred.
I think the other thing too is to clarify for with the discussion presentation on band logo too is that there's going to be discussion on the history and also the name. So so it might be, won't take that long, but you know, just give you guys a heads up.
Okay. Good, Shane. Okay, with that addition, any other additions or changes to the agenda? If not, I'll call for a motion to approve the agenda with that addition.
Move.
Oh, moved by
Second.
Shane, second by Tara. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, silent, motion carried. Okay, next we have approval of meeting minutes for September 7, 2022.
I have a correction on page 3 at the
Okay.
bottom when it talks about where Shane wants to bring up the BF logo. Let's see, where it talks about it was worded floors when it should have been forest, not floors. I remember reading, I just read it a little while ago.
Oh, people of the thick wood hardwood floors, it says, right in
Yeah,
the second sentence
It
after.
should be forest.
Okay,
I don't think our people were making hardwood floors back then.
okay, thanks, Jane.
Yep.
Okay, if no other corrections to the minutes, do we have a motion to approve the September 7, 2022 meeting minutes?
I'll move.
Moved by Tara. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Robert. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, silent, motion carried. Okay, next we have the consent agenda. We have first approval of EPA administrative orders. That vote was 400. Next is approved resolution number 33-2023 approving second SFIA app and covenants. That is the Sustainable Forest Initiative Act, 400. Next is approved first amendment to the Bluestone Phase 2 contract. That one is 400. Next is approved RFP for family health legal services, 400. Next is approved proposal and addendum for NCE to conduct an engineering assessment of the tribal government. Oh, wait, no, to conduct a structural engineering assessment of the tribal government building. Sorry, 400, motion carried. Next is approved vaccination requirement policy updates, 400. Next is approved sole source to custom theaters for $29,455 for the Vermilion Head Start building access, 400. Next is approved resolution 34-2023 prohibiting the 2022 wild rice season, 400. Next is approved resolution number 35-2023 approving SS4A grant app submission. Next is approved application for updating current transportation safety plan, 400. And next is approved request to cancel MB Customs A&E services, 400, motion carried. Any discussion on the consent agenda? Oh my goodness, I just lost my stuff. Okay, go ahead. Shane?
Yes, for the approval of the resolution regarding the prohibiting of the 2022 wild rice season. Again, I need to stress that it was a very difficult decision. I know that band members want to go out ricing and get eating rice and all that. It's just that it was a tough decision. The rice crop wasn't very good this year, from what I understand, and it wasn't made. It wasn't easy for me. I just want to point that out. And then the other thing too is the last part where it says the letter K, approved request to cancel MB Customs A&E services, that this is a band member owned business. If we could basically share some information as to why it was canceled, just for clarification purposes.
Okay. The tribal government, with all the projects going on within ARPA and infrastructure and all the money coming down, we put out a RFP for people to bid for A&E services, which is architectural and engineering services, to handle all these projects as one instead of getting a specific one for each project. And so those were put out there, and MB Customs was the higher plus band member business. They got the opportunity to conduct the A&E services. And then when the cost came in, it was quite high. Average A&E cost was about 8-9%, and MB Customs was somewhat considerably higher than that. And so we did contact them and ask them if they would be interested in lowering their rate to the average, which was about 8 or 9. And at that time, they were not. So we decided to move forward, cancel the approved request of MB Customs because we need to kind of move rather quickly with these projects. We need soil borings and everything for future projects because they're looking for shovel-ready projects. So the council then was sent a request to cancel the MB Customs for A&E due to the high bid and not willing to go down to the average of 8.8 to 9%. And so we went with the second company, which I believe Carol Burr, our planning and community development, is meeting with the other company that is doing the A&E services, and that was the second one in the RFP was DSGW. So that's what happened with that, was they were unwilling to come down to the average. They were just somewhat higher than.
No, I think the other thing too to point out is that, we as a tribal council, or myself, and speaking for myself, actually, not for the tribal council, but speaking for myself, I want to employ as many band members as I can. And sometimes it doesn't work out, that way. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions on the consent agenda or comments?
Kathy,
Oh,
I'd like
Nikki,
to
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Tara.
Kathy, I'd like to point out on the wild rice prohibiting that my main reason was we do not have sufficient conservation and enforcement to handle this project. We are without COs and have been for a while. We're borrowing from 1854, and that shouldn't be happening. So that was one of my main reasons.
Mm-hmm.
And then MB Customs, I did note in my vote that any other company needs to be held to that same standard.
Yep.
They can't go higher also. And I do know that we had some follow-up items from MB Customs. And I just believe that we should take a second look, but we can move on if we need to.
Okay.
Thanks.
Oh, thank you, Tara. Nikki?
Yep, there was just a question on the YouTube page from Darren Grid. Since wild rice is prohibitive, is the tribe collecting insurance on the rice crop, or is that just for damages to the rice? I don't know if that's a question you can answer right now, but
Kim, can you answer that question?
You're muted, Kim.
You're muted.
Yeah, I know I'm getting unmuted. In previous years, we have gotten a small amount of money for loss of crops. It's about, don't quote me on it, but it's like it's about 30,000 a year, and then we put that back into either the rice buying or the lake restoration. And I don't know where they're at in the claim, because the DNR handles that claim. It's through the USDA. So, and I know we pay the insurance each year, and then they have to do a claim, some kind of claim, and I don't know the whole ins and outs, how it all works.
Okay.
I received an email from Doc Holm regarding the insurance, and he says there is a rice insurance claim pending. Application has been filed with the FSA, awaiting a crop assessor to be scheduled by FSA to come out and view the situation. The tribe gets a percentage payment based on estimated production lost decreased this year compared to a 10-year running average production. I don't know exactly what the value will be at this point, as is based on assessor's opinion of loss. Last time we received insurance payment, it totaled approximately 18,000. The funds historically go back to the restoration and rice sales program.
Okay. So yeah, the process is in the work and it's handled by DNR. So I don't know if there's another question from Darren or anyone else regarding that. Okay. All right. Okay, do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Move.
Moved by Shane, is there a second? Second by Robert. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, silent, motion carried. We have Miranda Lilia, who's our acting executive director. And so Miranda is actually filling in 2 roles today, HR and acting executive director. And we want to thank you, Miranda, for assuming the acting executive director position. And appreciate your willingness to step forward and take on 2 jobs. So. Okay. Next, we have Jenny Rowland for the discussion on placement of the transit facility. Good morning, Jenny.
Good morning. Good morning. Well, time's a charm. Third application for grant application for building a transit facility was successful. We got over $9.5 million. And I've also received my grant award letter, which allows me to accrue expenses after September 30th. But in preparation for that, I'm going to need some kind of letter, documentation, confirmation from the Tribal Council on their dedication of land and a specific location for the construction of the transit garage.
Okay, and Jenny, with this transit garage, you're also putting in infrastructure.
Yeah,
up
so
to
the
Roy's
grant that I
Field as
wrote,
well.
yeah, the grant I wrote was 4-prong. It was a construction of a transit facility, full service with offices and meeting rooms and bay, wash bay, mechanic bay, inside parking, everything. Also with a plaza outside with raised gardens and farmers market area and meeting area with outside benches. Although I think that would be pressed in the spring with mosquito season. And bringing out water and sewer from where it ends out to, if this is the location that's chosen, then it'll be bringing it out to Joe Roy's Field here, where I think it was tentatively planned to be office industrial park type of development. And then also a walking bike trail from Pineview Road there at the edge of the village all the way out here and loop around and back. I received a letter of support from the Net Lake School because the principal stated that they would use this ball field or this playground area if they could walk the children out here safely. So, and right now I'm in discussion with Squidge about putting out these exercise stations. There's like cement exercise stations, and they're, with a plaque on how to use them and that kind of stuff. That's for additional fitness for the community. Mm-hmm.
It looks great. Jenny's given us some drawings, and it's the building is tentatively looking to be right next to the food shelf there.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't see why we wouldn't give you a letter of commitment.
We had kind of walked that area. There doesn't have to be a lot of development for that location. We would use it in and out for that's already built for the DNR garage there on the corner of the property. And it's a flat area. It wouldn't be a lot of like trees to be taken down or anything like that. And then having the plaza as a joint area between the transit facility and the food shelf would really work in conjunction with the food shelf program, healthy foods, grow your own, that kind of all their programs that they're working on, and then we could be a supportive area for them.
Great. Any questions or comments for Jenny? I want to say congratulations on your third application. Never give up, right?
Never give up.
And this is huge for Boys Fort, and we want to thank you for all the work and dedication and your staff. You guys do a great job.
Thank you. Thank you. This was a huge project.
Yeah.
It was huge.
Yes, I'd like to say congratulations too, and looking at the pictures of it, the garage there, wow. Looks like a beautiful building.
Well, I hope so.
Okay, do we have I'm going to put this to a motion to give a commitment to the Boys Fort Transit Program for the land for this facility to be constructed on, and support and commitment from us with regards to a successful project here at Boys Fort, and located out, we'll call it Joe Roy's Field. I'm sure there's a legal land description,
Yes.
but we'll get that letter drafted, and I'd like to have a motion to approve that.
Mhm.
Move.
Motion by Shane, second by Travis. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, silent, motion carried. Jenny, when do you plan on starting on this project?
Well, I've kind of already started on it. I've
Okay.
been working with Chris Holm, working on updating. He's already updated the environmental assessment. We're working on a NEPA. I
Okay.
think I'm waiting for this. Kim and I have been in conversation regarding planning of the building, the contractors. I think you discussed it earlier in the meeting.
Mhm.
And so when that's set, we can, I can contact the winner of that contract, and they should be able to get something, maybe soil samples or some kind of location. I think I need to get the TIPO out there just as insurance, just to double check on that. And anything else anybody can think of, shoot me an email. And then theoretically, we should be able to break ground in the spring.
Wonderful. Yep,
Mhm.
wonderful. Well, great job
awesome.
again.
Yes, good job.
We're
All
very
right, thank
excited
you.
for you.
Woohoo! So am I.
Okay. Thanks, Jenny. You
I
have a
don't-
good,
unless you write grants, I don't think anybody really understands the massive project. It's massive. Just I had over 20 attachments to the grant alone. So it was a big project. Thank you very much.
great job. You have a good day, Jenny.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, next we have Melissa Wright with the contract agreement with DHS COVID ARPA Mental Health Funds Contract. Good morning, Melissa.
Hello. So we have a COVID ARPA monies from DHS award in the amount of $397,677. And that is for additional mental health services. So we're planning to cover existing costs so that we're not pulling out of third-party revenues, and also hoping to expand more. We are looking to expand more services in the schools, and also updating equipment and getting supplies that we need to kind of help with marketing and getting more educational materials out to band members, and working on just kind of more educational stuff as well. This
I like
grant
that.
is part of it needs to be spent by March of 2023, and then the remaining will be spread out through 2025. So definitely a nice grant from DHS.
Wonderful. It's awesome to see that they're putting some mental health specific funding in for ARPA that we can utilize. And it sounds like you have some flexibility with these to fit the need of the community, which is really good. And the pandemic has caused a lot of isolation issues among our elders and issues with kids and families. And so it's just been tremendous. And you know, even the loss of our people, the grieving. And so you guys are doing a great job there. And any additional funding that you can get to help meet that need is it's great. So good job. Any questions for Melissa? Okay, if not,
Yes.
go ahead, Shane.
Actually, it might be more towards maybe Jeff or Kim. If you look under page, I don't know, number 13, audit requirements and tribal nation development information. 13.1 state audit. Now it goes on to say the books, records, documents, and accounting procedures and practices of the tribal nation or other party that are relevant to the contract are subject to examination by state and either the legislative auditor or state auditor. What exactly they can come in? Does that mean that they can come in any time to review just this, right?
Yeah. Okay, go ahead, Jeff.
Well, I was just going to mention that the state audit, that clause is something that the state has always basically said, if we're going to grant you funds, we need to include an auditing clause. What we've done to limit the scope of it, like you mentioned, Shane, is to make sure that that clause indicates that it's only an audit related to the agreement. And so in my experience, I haven't had the state come in and do like a grant specific audit like that. However, if they did, I think, you know, the band's perspective would be it is very narrow because it only relates to the books and any information specific to that grant. So it would not be an audit of, you know, a lot broader than that, or, you know, the tribe's books beyond the grant specifically.
And on the flip side of that, you know, any information that we gather, it needs to stay on file by the state standards or by our standards.
Well, we'd keep, you know, the tribe, the band has a record keeping, you know, requirement depending on the types of records it is. Each grant has its own, you know, potentially has its own record keeping requirements in it. So it can differ from grant to grant. So, you know, I don't recall offhand if this has a specific grant requirement or requirement for keeping records for a specific time, but we'd want to comply with that if it includes that in the grant agreement.
Okay, thank you.
What I was going to say is that we have several desk audits from the state on state programs. They'll pick a month and they'll say that they want to see like our general ledger. They want to see all the time cards, all the check requests, purchase orders. And they don't come here. The staff uploads the documents to them. They review them. Like, you know, and other programs have audits. And the council may have received letters like WIC has a specific audit, EPA or not EPA, Energy Assistance does. You know, so there's various ones that are going on all the time where we report back to them and they ask. And it happens with federal funds too. There's some federal funds that we have to do desk audits on too. So it goes back and forth. It's quite common.
Okay, any other questions for Melissa, Kim, Jeff, whoever? Okay, if not, I'll call for a motion to approve the contract agreement with DHS for the COVID ARPA mental health funds contract, which will run from 2023 to 2025 in the amount of $397,000, $397,677 for additional mental health services.
Move.
Moved by Travis. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Robert. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Silent? Motion carried. Good job, Melissa.
Thanks,
Keep up the good
everyone.
work. Okay, next we have George Strong. He has a contract agreement with Native One Voice for fiscal year 2023 carriage agreement. And it's a renewal contract. Good morning, George. I'm not sure if you're talking, but you're muted and
Maybe he's not on the right frequency. You there, George?
there you go.
Oh, Mino Gajeb, Ogumawag.
Minu Gajib. Okay, George, we have your Native One Voice 2023 carriage agreement renewal.
Yeah, this is just needs your signature. It's a renewal that we've been doing every year, and so pretty standard, same agreement, no changes.
Okay. Money's in the budget and it's $6,700 for the year, correct?
Yes.
Wonderful. Okay, any questions or comments for George on the contract? On the program renewal? If not, I'll call for a motion to approve the renewal of the contract agreement with Native One Voice for FY23 in the amount of $6,700.
Move.
Moved by Shane, is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Tara, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, silent, motion carried. Keep up the good
on,
work,
Miigwech.
George. Miigwech.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it. Yep.
Okay, next we have Pam Parson, monthly update on compliance program. Good morning, Pam. Nunagajip. There you are.
Morning.
Morning.
How is everybody today?
Good.
All right, so I'm going to give you guys my compliance report. So currently what we're working on, well, what I'm working on is the security risk assessment. And for the 2021 security risk assessment that I did, I always do a work plan alongside that document. So for 2022, the work plan. So if you guys want me to review it real quick, I certainly can.
Sure.
All right. So each year we're required to do a security risk assessment. So the first one is section 1, and that's just the basics. So for 2021, our risk assessment indicates there's no threats or vulnerabilities for this section. Section 2 is about security policies, and I had to address question number 8. How do we ensure the security and risk management documentation is available to those who need it? So in 2022, the action I did was I informed all employees of the location of the security and risk.
Uh-oh, we lost her. She dropped off. Are you there, Pam?
Sorry, guys, I lost you.
Yeah, you dropped off quickly. You were on the part about showing a staff where the risk assessment information is or something. That's where you kind of ended up.
Yep, and that's in the Boy Sport O drive and the health compliance folder. So all new hires go through our employee orientation in person with myself. And I physically show them how to access the information, just because what I noticed is people said, oh yeah, I know where to find it. But then every time they needed something, they would call me and say, I can't find it. So I physically show all our new employees. In addition, we're going to do, I'll be doing employee surveys, and I'll be meeting one-on-one with them and asking them to show me how to get into the health compliance documents. And that's for auditing and monitoring purposes, just so I can know that employees do know where to get the information. Section 3 revolves around the security in our workforce. Question 13, they asked if procedures are in place for monitoring login attempts and reporting discrepancies. So starting in November 2021, I began monitoring all employees' login attempts monthly through a report in Epic. I also use a user list, and it tells me all the logins that have been successful or unsuccessful. And then I just look for anomalies with that. Question 19 was, what is included in your sanction policy that to help personnel accountable if they do not follow the policies and procedures? So what we're doing there is we're reviewing the sanction policy annually to ensure that the it's reasonable, it's appropriate, and it addresses the accountability to all the employees who do not adhere to our policies. Security and data, management of data. So we implemented a system access request form for each manager, and each manager needs to justify the employee access they're given to their employees, and that's documented and monitored by myself. We have security in the practice. So we do not currently have physical protections in place for our electronic devices. And so I'm working on this one, and I just need to research this one through surveying of the employees to find out who has laptops and are they locked down somewhat, that type of thing. And then maintaining records for any physical changes and modifications to the facility. And that's really gonna go down to Randy. And so that's something I need to work with Randy on, just because he does all the security, he does all the computer work. Contingency planning is something else we need to do. We need to make sure that we are doing the contingency planning. And then the last one is backing up and restoring critical data. And basically with that one, I just want to test it to see if our data is being backed up, if we can retrieve the data. That's another one I have to talk to Randy about. Are there any questions?
No, that's a really good information, Pam, that you know, tribal members and even the council ourselves understand that, you know, there is a huge compliance issue within the health field, health and human services field. So you're right on top of it. That's really good to know and good information.
Okay, and then I'm just going to quickly go through the questions. So one of my greatest concerns, again, is outsider attacks, and that's the phishing and the ransomware. Some of the issues, the top 3 issues I'm working on right now is completion of the required training by staff. So ensuring all the staff have completed their training. Another one was the HR filing of all the training documents, and that got completed for 2021. And then, of course, the security risk assessment and working on that work plan. The top 3 risks we are monitoring right now are the people risks. And again, that's the phishing and the ransomware. The resources, I feel like I do have the resources to do the responsibilities of my job. And I do feel like I have access to the people, information, and data. For the most part, people listen to me, and the concerns that I bring up are taken seriously. And then the last question is, are you meeting to discuss new strategies, projects, and initiatives to ensure they are pursued compliantly? And so that one's not formally, I'm not invited formally to the meetings for this discussion, but informally, Lynette does discuss with me any upcoming projects and strategies and that type of thing. So I'm aware of them, but I'm not involved in the meetings of them. So are there any questions?
No, it's a really good report, though. Good to hear.
All right, that's about all. We have our meeting with Tim on Monday. So hopefully everybody can be there. It's very important that we have Tim come down and tell us what some of the new things that are coming out that we have to do. That's kind of, he gives me my work plan kind of for the next year of what I need to get done.
Sounds good. Really good. Thank you, Pam. Miigwech.
Being recorded. Lost you guys again.
Oh, miigwech, Pam. Thank you very much. Keep up the good
And if
work.
there's no questions, I will see you in the executive session.
Okay. Have a good day. We'll talk to you in a bit. Yeah, Gigawabaman. Okay, next we have Fred McDougall, band member, and he's here to discuss a discussion on presentation on the band logo and some history here. Good morning, Fred.
Good morning, everybody. I got to say,
You've got the floor, sir.
having a meeting like this is really something I've never done before, but you know, one good thing, Kathy, when you talk about White Earth Reservation and that stuff that happened down at Chakti, at least you can't get punched in this kind of a meeting.
Okay, Fred, you have the floor. Go ahead, sir.
Okay. First of all, I'd like to start by saying this may sound like a lecture, but I don't mean it to be a lecture, but there's quite a bit of information that I'd at least try to call your attention to. And as I go on, you might see where this whole thing is going and the importance of it. I'd like to thank Shane for sitting down and hearing me out so that he could somehow get this to a council meeting so we could make this quick presentation. By way of starting, I don't know if anybody knows William Warren's book on the history of the Ojibwe people. If you're not familiar with it, personally, I've been using this as a reference book as long as I can remember. The book was written by William Warren back in the 1850s. Excuse me. Cell phones. Back in the 1850s, the reason I call anybody's attention to this book is that it's probably the most accurate historical record of Ojibwe culture, religion, and all sorts of other things. Warren was an Ojibwe, fluent-speaking Ojibwe back in the 50s, wrote this book. It was published by the Minnesota Historical Society, and it makes reference to some of the subjects I'm going to try and relay to you today. I'd like to start out by saying he's an Ojibwe, lived in the 1850s, had access, and when he did the research on his book, he had access to Indian people from that era. Most of what was passed on to him was, of course, through oral history. He documented it, he understood it, he had a feeling for it, and I think it probably comes as close as you possibly can to anything authenticated, including everybody who's ever written about Ojibwe history. I think what's important that most people do know that the history of the Ojibwe and the whole issue of the migration of the Ojibwe people, which was basically oral history, all right? And if you don't mind, I might have to read a couple of passages out of this book, but I'll try to make them short. But during his collection of this oral history from these old fluent-speaking Ojibwe people, was that the Ojibwe actually migrated from the East Coast. And I'm sure everybody's already heard this part of it. But the migration from the East Coast was not only a cultural migration, historic migration, traditional migration, religious migration, because the story goes that out of the Atlantic Ocean, where we once resided, the sacred Migis shell rose up out of the water, and the Ojibwe people were to follow that Migis shell to the west. Puts us in our current location. And I mean, talking about all the Ojibwe bands and tribes and so on and so forth. What's interesting about this migration, it's oral history, never been really documented. It's been passed on from generation to generation, and it has become part of the culture. A few years back, when I served as the executive director of the Minnesota Chippewa Tribe, the superintendent of the Minnesota agency, which is the Minnesota, 6 reservations of the band of the tribe, was a man named Rex Mayotte. Kathy remembers him. I don't know if anybody else would, but this goes back a ways. You're dating yourself, Kathy. Called me one afternoon or during the day one day and said, Fred, I found something in the files that is pretty interesting, and I think you ought to come and get it and take a look at it. Well, I went and got it, and that's what you guys have a copy of, all right? The original copy that I got from Rex Mayotte, which is the only one that we are aware of that existed, that was found in the files, buried there for God knows how many years. Shane now has the original copy, all right? So I think each and every one of you have a copy of this thing, and I suggest that when you find the time, and you find the time, is to read this. Now, I'm going to go into this just a little bit, all right? This particular monograph was written by a man named Albert B. Reagan, who was a PhD in the Department of Ethnology at Brigham Young University in Utah. Now, this is important, and you might want to take a note on this, or at least if you can highlight some of this. While Albert B. Reagan, the writer of this paper, and that's the one you have before you, a historical chart of the migrations of the Bois Forte Indians, was a curio collector, and pay close attention to this, a curio collector, and ethnologist contributor to the National Victoria Museum in Canada. While an Indian agent, so he was an Indian agent on this reservation, while an Indian agent on the Bois Forte Chippewa Reservation at Nett Lake from 1909 to 1914, all right? He obtained several birch bark ritual and historic charts. Among these were the ritual and historical charts of this paper. So he actually wrote this paper from those charts, and I'll go on with how that came out. As we know, the Bois Forte Indians, and what's interesting in Warren's book, the Bois Forte people were referred to back in the 1850s as the Dagana-Winiwug, which means the people of the thick, dark forests. Back in 1850, that has been chronicled in his book. All right. While an Indian agent at Bois Forte, 1909 to 14, he obtained several birch bark historic charts. Among these were the ritual historic charts of the papers he's writing. As we know, the Bois Forte Indians, in these historic charts, and also through his interpretation, again, in 1909, we are still referred to as the Ga-Winiwug, men of the thick, dark woods, all right? So that comes from 1805 or 1850 all the way through, okay? These men from the thick fir and hardwoods came from the vicinity of the north or the east from, well, anyhow, there were some historic charts that were made by these people who made this migration or participated in this migration. All right. Now, the explanation of the migration chart of the Bois Forte people is appended and is not available wasn't available for reproduction. The chart, those charts, those birch bark scrolls are missing. They're gone. The explanation of the chart having been obtained from, now this is what's interesting. I'm sure everybody has heard of Farmer John, right? Either through whatever. His wife, Mrs. Farmer John, was in possession of these charts on the Bois Forte Reservation during the time of Reagan. What's important, because he's a curio collector and also an anthropologist, ethnologist attached to Brigham and an Indian agent here, it's more than a coincidence that those charts disappeared when he left from here and went to the Victoria Museum in Canada. That's not unusual for curio collectors. These charts, these charts are the journey of our people. Mrs. Farmer John is now talking, translating these charts to Reagan, who's writing this paper. You got that kind of progression there? This is the chart of the journey of our people, Mrs. Farmer John talking, once lived on the other side of the continent, over on the East Coast, right? She goes on in this thing that you have. She goes on to interpret those charts for him. He writes them in his paper. All right. Those were pretty much glyphs. If you look at this copy that you have now, if you look at it, go to page 230, which is 3 pages back. This is pretty much what those charts looked like, what those birch bark charts looked like. He had transcribed or drawn examples of those charts into this paper, which, you know, and he finishes the paper with all the explanations that Mrs. Farmer John gives to him. Where these charts or these scrolls are is probably anybody's guess. After going through a lot of research, and I'm trying to condense it here, I at least convinced myself, and I've been over the years trying to convince other people, that those charts were taken by Reagan. And I believe they were taken to the Victoria Museum in Canada, and they could still be there, right? Just bear with me for just a second here. In 1910, and this was research I did when I was working on, as a matter of fact, I appended a lot of this historic information and his cultural information, his religious information into my master's thesis when I was working on my master's, because I did my master's on wild rice and the economy of wild rice and how it reflects on people and the history and the culture and the religious aspects of wild rice. So anyhow, part of my research was in 1910, the Department of Commerce and Labor, Bureau of Census of the United States, enumerated on the 15th day of April by Frank H. Paquette. You ever heard that name? Anybody familiar with that name? He was an Indian engineer too. My mother used to talk about him. Carries Mrs. Farmer John, and her Indian name, of course, you know, you also, when you got enumerated, your Indian name usually went on a census, okay? In 1910, Mrs. Farmer John lists her age at her last birthday as 90 years old. And lists her age of her last birthday. Farmer John is also listed there as 100 years plus. So in between 1910 and 1914, she transcribed these charts for him. And of course, then eventually went missing. I don't know how to describe these charts other than their relevance to the Bois Forte band of people. Everything that I've read with Warren was always, and this is important, was always oral history. This particular group of charts or scrolls are not oral history. They are, in fact, recorded history. These charts were recorded by, now, again, pay attention to this part of it. Mrs. Farmer John said these charts were prepared and recorded by her grandfather's grandfather. By her grandfather's grandfather. I personally believe that, you know, that she not only had possession of these charts, but they were somehow came up missing. Now, if you take a look at 2022 and go back to 1910 when she was 90 years plus, one thing I do know about generations, whether it's, you know, a generation is about 40 years in length, a generation. Her grandfather's grandfather. Now, this is a quick study on my part. I'm not sure how accurate I am, but I try to trace this from Mrs. Farmer John to her grandfather's grandfather would have been 5 generations. 5 generations at approximately 40 years per generation. So, to the best of my ability of figuring, from 22 back to 10, and take the 90 years off of that, and her grandfather's grandfather, making 5 generations. These charts, these scrolls, actually had to have been started about 1624. And that still would have to be validated because, like I say, I only did a rough study on it. That's not my skill, you know. However, if you think at 1624, the Pilgrims landed here in 1620. So around the same time, these charts kept being passed on through Mrs. Farmer John's grandfather's grandfather's grandfather. One thing about these charts are not oral history. I think they are, by whatever means the people used, they were recorded history, whether they were glyphs or pictographs or whatever. But if you go through that particular document I gave you, it traces where they stopped, when they moved, you know, following the sacred Migi shell, which is part of the Medewan, you know, religion. And I'm sure I'm probably repeating a lot of stuff you already know. I seen the importance of this. I did as much research as I could. In fact, quite frankly, I've done a lot of research on it. brought it to the attention of the RBC back in the old days, back in the 70s, before it was a tribal council, you know, back before 93-638 and everything, you know, the whole works. At the time, there was no 93-638. There wasn't no Bryan versus Itasca County. There wasn't any subcontracting from the Bureau. Boys Fort was controlled almost totally in those days by the Bureau of Indian Affairs, from roads and health service and, you know, all of those things. There was no gaming. The best way I can describe it is RBC at that point in time, which I was the director at the time, was probably poor as church mice. We didn't have any unencumbered sort of resources. There wasn't no gaming funds or anything. When this was brought to their attention, they also seen the interest. And that would have been Gary Donald and Dan Morrison and Harry Bonis, what's her name from Tower. But they took an interest, but they just didn't have any way to try to get to the bottom of where these charts are or trying to find these charts. Because my suggestion was that an effort should be made to bring those charts, if they are still available and where they are available, back to the Boys Fort people. They're very significant. These charts also mention Fond du Lac. They also mention Mille Lacs. They mention pretty much the Menominee, pretty much of the Ojibwe people, the North and the South and everything. Well, I think that this is not only important to Boys Fort, but the tribe, individual band members of the tribe, State of Minnesota Historical Society. I think it's not only a necessary opportunity to try, at least making an attempt to find those charts, whether they're available or not anymore. They're in Canada, I believe. I personally believe they're in Canada, somewhere in some archives in the bottom of the basement of some museum. And the people who, or whoever has possession of them, don't realize the importance. I think we should realize the importance. So the name is important. And one thing about Boys Fort, that's a French name, I guess you guys know. It means hardwoods. But yet we also have a name, the Ganawiniwag, which also means thick hardwoods. It goes back to the 1850s. I know I'm repeating myself, but the thing is, I don't believe we are the Boys Forts. I believe we are the Ganawiniwag. You know, that's our language. It's been proven in more cases than one. It was reaffirmed by Mrs. Farmer John, and so on and so forth. Well, anyhow, I believe that the band and the tribe and anybody else who has a vested interest in these documents, and I call them documents because they are documents, should make an effort to try and recover them, or at least see that the information in this monograph is somehow codified in the origin and the migration of the Minnesota Anishinaabe. All right. The word Chippewa, I've talked to many people about Chippewa. Should not be Chippewa, it should be Anishinaabe. The tribe should understand that. Most bands do understand that. But in 1934, when the Wheeler-Howard Act went through and they created tribal governments, we were told to create those governments of our own choosing as long as they're democratic. But all the way along, there was always some sort of, and you could take this for what it's worth, somebody deciding not only what our name should be, how it should be used in our governmental affairs and so on and so forth. If you look at the tribe's constitution, we're Bois Fort's in there, you know, when we're really the Ganawin Wugs. I think that's pretty much, and jump in anytime if you need to ask me a question, I'll try and answer it.
Fred,
Yes.
you know, thank you for sharing all of that. You know, I totally agree with you that we need, as a tribe, we need to pursue those goals. My grandmother, her maiden name was Margaret Farmer. They lived out at Farmer John's. That's where she was raised. I have stories when she was a young girl and she was writing some events that happened out there at Farmer John's when she was a little girl. And there is a burial site out there at Farmer John's. That's where her family stayed. My grandpa's family, Ray Drift, his dad was a Drift and his mother was a Good Sky. And the Good Skies, as you know, stayed out at Sugar Bush. The Drifts stayed out at Indian Point. That's where they made their home. And getting back to my grandmother, you know, she talked about scrolls. She talked about Medallion scrolls as well. You know, she told me about these scrolls. And also the history of the migration of our people coming following that shell. And we even have it recorded where she talked about the shell and people coming following that shell. Also people coming from some of the bands used to live down in the Hibbing Chisholm area, and that young hunter tracking that moose north, and how our people came here to that lake. You know, and you are correct. And when we say that it should not be Bois Forte Band, my act has it written down as Zaga Quandago Wininiwug. I don't know where that Quandago came from, but it should be Zaga Wininiwug, like what Fred just said. Zaga Wininiwug.
Okay, let me interrupt you. Just Warren records it different. Mrs. Farmer John records it different. There's different pronunciations of that whole idea about the thick, but see that it's not a drastic difference, but a first speakers should look at those original Ojibwe words and come up with what is more accurate. They're spelt different in three different instances, but they still mean the same thing. Okay.
Yes.
So you're right about that. One other thing, there was a consideration at one time. Somebody said, did it ever occur to you that those charts may be in Bois Forte to this day in someone's, you know, there's people who have artifacts from going way back when, and what you're saying is there is a possibility that they're even still here somewhere in somebody's possession who took care of them all these years, or don't know what they are, or have them in their attic. That's a possibility too, Shane. So I don't know. All of that.
Yes, I think, you know, also, you know, like the historical society might have them. You know, because that's where we're getting some of them. Actually, my family just got the water drum brought back to our museum, which in turn gave it over to our family. I am now in possession of it. The Drift family water drum. All the families had a water drum at one time. There's more than just one here. And you know, when it says Bois Forte Band, and I pointed this out before, if you look at the 1866 treaty, it's Bois Forte Bands. There's an S at the end of band. And listening to the elders talk, there was like 18 to 22 big families, bands, if you will, that made up Bois Forte. So when they signed that treaty back then, it was Bois Forte bands of Chippewa. So that's why I said that we need to address our name. We need to correct our name. And instead of Chippewa, it should be Anishinaabeg. And then the other thing too, Fred, I think that it's important is to address the seal. If you'd want to talk about that a little bit.
Okay, I was gonna go into that next unless there was some other questions, but and then I'll try to tie this all together. And what I have here is a copy of the Bois Forte News, the old format, okay? And if you don't mind, because I don't know where we get other copies of this, but I can make copies of it, but I'd like to read something here, okay? And if you'll bear with me, the Bois Forte News, well, first of all, I'm not going to toot my horn, but I was the one who designed the seal, but I didn't design it. I only put it together. It was done with the consultation of the RBC. Now that's the way you see on a flag and everything, right? If you allow me to read this, at the time, and I'm skipping ahead a little bit. At the time, the Minnesota Chippewa tribe had a seal. The Minnesota Chippewa tribe requested that each band develop their own seal or flag, which could fly in the new Minnesota Chippewa tribe headquarters. Okay, so it's kind of like the United Nations kind of thing. Now this is the writer who was writing this and was interviewing me. Said Fred had a background in graphic design. So then Chairman Gary Donald, Secretary Treasurer Dan Morrison Sr., and members of the RBC asked him to take on the responsibility of developing the Bois Forte seal. The seal was subsequently, and this is what's important, the seal was subsequently adopted as the official seal of the Bois Forte band by the RBC, okay? Me talking. I remember the Gitchimani-Do vision of the creation and how the Great Spirit had brought the vision into existence. It seems appropriate to begin with a circle. Now, I'm describing the seal, okay? As part of the seal, given its shape, the circle is universally important to Indigenous people as a symbol of, and it signifies life, the circle of life, the drum, the dance, the sun, the moon, as well as many other sacred meanings, from the movement of the great universe to the small circle of the child's dream catcher. So the circle was where it started, okay? I then thought, and I'm still putting it all together, I then thought it was necessary to divide the circle into quadrants, all right? The significance of the quadrants are to represent, amongst many things, the four orders of creation: the physical world, the plant world, the animal world, and the human. The four directions of the wind, the four directions of north, south, east, and west, and the seasons: fall, spring, summer, winter. Okay. The quadrants are important. The four directions of just about everything is somehow encompassed in those quadrants. The design colors include clearly intend to represent the fullness of the world around us. The background half circle represents orange. Okay, you see the orange on that is the sun. That is the sun. But it's not the sun. It's the rising or the setting sun, depending on where you're looking at it. So it represents both rising and setting. That's why it's orange. The half circle represents the orange of the morning and evening sun, beginning and ending the day. The brown of the Mother Earth, the green of the trees, the other growing things on earth are in the left half of the circle. The blue of the lake, the sacred Spirit Island, which was absolutely necessary to go in there. There was no way Spirit Island could have been left out of that logo. Are in the right half. All is covered by the blue sky. Now, this is where the controversy didn't really start, but ended up, okay? There was a need to incorporate life into this circle. A human, possibly a deer, a fish, a turtle, maybe a hawk, eagle. The choice presented a difficult decision until I recall a story my grandma Ganya told me as a child, the story about how the little duck, the hell diver, and how he came to get his eyes because his red eyes because Nana Bourgeois tried to trick his little butt. Probably everybody heard that story. However, the duck embodies most of the powers of all animals, the four-leggeds, the winged, the two-leggeds. It has the ability, the duck, it has the ability to walk like a turtle, swim, hunt under the water like the fish, fly like the hawk. They live in the water, they feed in the water, they raise their young in the water, they birth their young on land. Ducks migrate each fall and see more of the world than any other animal. The duck closely embodies the powers of the animals and the human, becoming the most obvious choice was the duck, all right? The migration and the whole thing. The ducks, now this is where the rub comes. The ducks on the seal at some point in time have been changed. Those shadow ducks that you see on the seal. The ducks featured now are not the ducks created and approved for the seal. The original, what happened is somebody took it upon themselves to change those ducks from spirit ducks, because that's what they were supposed to represent, was not ducks per se, but spirit animals. And for all the reasons that we could come up with below. I don't know who changed that. I don't know under whose authority they changed that. I don't know if it was some lithographer who decided that they changed that when they were printing materials for the band or whatever. I can't envision without tribal approval that those specific spirit ducks, that's what they are, spirit ducks, would have been changed to silhouettes. That is not to say that it couldn't have been done. That is not to say that, in other words, that tribal seal does not, at least at this point, unless somebody proves it different, is not the seal that the band adopted. So it has been altered severely enough to take away its meaning. Sad part about it, it's on your water tower. It's carved in stone in a Veterans Memorial. It's on your letterheads. It's that the ducks with those shadows in it appear every place that you could possibly see. So even this building here, the glass, you know, where those kind of ducks appear on that glass. They're etched in there. They can't be changed. Couldn't be altered. It's pretty much up to the band council how they want to handle that, even if they do. I'm only calling it to their, to your attention that, for lack of a better word, the seal has been bastardized. Okay. All right, it goes on to talk about Spirit Island and so on and so on. About how the band itself, everybody made contributions to this. I just interpreted, I just drew it. That's pretty much what I had done. Gary Donald, Dan Morrison, Gene Bourget, Doris Isham, Phyllis Bourget, just to name a few, were leaders who were dedicated to these principles of preservation, culture, language preservation, as well as running the government as an operational, entity. Now, are you ready for this? I have only one regret putting this seal together. At the time, we were not aware of the Ghana, Winnie Wug, or all this other stuff. That was not brought to the attention of anybody at that point, or these scrolls, anything. But the only thing I can say in this, and this is just me, because everybody else is talking in this, I have only one regret that I was not aware of the Anishinaabe name of our people until the seal was completed and adopted. There you see Boys Forts. There you see, you don't see Anishinaabe, you see Minnesota Chippewa tribe. All of these are, it has since been my feeling that the name belongs in the outer circle, which could be added to the circle, and that's the Ghana Winnie Wug once we straighten out the right spelling on it. This would include our Anishinaabe name and a translation ensuring our original name and its meaning will always be remembered. That was just my feeling. It's pretty much, in my opinion, pretty much what up to you how you're going to handle this situation with the flag or not. That these names and these translations could be added to the seal if you're going to take another action. You'd almost have to take another action or go back and amend the very first tribal, the very first Boys Fort band adoption of this original seal. You can go back and, throw that out and put the other one, whatever you choose to do. But if you're going to get those shadow ducks the hell out of there, I hate to talk like that, but if you're going to get those shadow ducks the hell out of there and reinstate the spirit ducks, you might want to consider, instead of Chippewa, Anishinaabe, you might want to consider, instead of Boys Forts, the Ghana Winnie Wug, with the translations on the outer ring of the circle. What you really would be doing would be correcting one thing and adding something that you think is more traditional to the band seal. I think that's about all I have to say. I just need to impress upon you, and probably who else, how important that people who take it upon themselves, like the Bureau of Indian Affairs, you guys know about the honky out bill? When the tribes nationally decided that any retiring non-Indian out of the Bureau of Indian Affairs would be replaced by an Indian? Yep, that's a law. So I guess what I'm saying is the band and the tribes, not only here, but nationally, have been influenced by non-Indian thinking and non-Indian action. And not that that's bad, but I've always been one that at least try to correct some of these inequities, no matter what it takes. So that's just a consideration for the council. And, you know, unless you have any questions, I think I've kind of summed it up as best I could without going into too much detail, but there is a lot of detail there. You know.
Fred, this is Kathy.
Pardon me?
This is Kathy.
Yeah.
Just that historical and cultural aspect that you have given us today, the history of how things began and the reasons why. I think that's been lacking. You know, some look at the band seal, oh, the ducks are there because of duck hunting. That's not the way it was. You gave us the cultural aspect, the way the seal was developed, of how significant that seal was and its meaning to Boys Fort. And so I'm very impressed with the story. We're oral historians, and I did not know a lot of this, and I'm very thankful that you came up to see us today on this. Also, the scrolls or charts you mentioned, I think what we can do about that too is we'll see if Jalen, our Heritage Center director, can start researching these scrolls. And I'm sure he's got some knowledge of them. He's really delved into the culture and history and language, and maybe we need to send him up to the Victorian Museum for these scrolls as a starting point, but also to just sit down and discuss with you and record the stories and the things that you have, because we lack a lot of that historical knowledge and reasoning why things were done in a certain way. And so I believe the seal was changed more recently without considering that cultural aspect. I think it's something that the council needs to look at and discuss, and that's just my comments. I'll leave it for the other council members if they want to make any comments, but I do appreciate what you've told us today, and it's nice talking about the old days too with you, Fred.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, I'll let the others speak if they want.
Yes, first of all, I'd like to say thank you, Fred, for reaching out to me and bringing this to my attention. I know that we worked on this for a while and met on it a few times, you know, regarding this, the information and all that, and sharing the information that I had from my family standpoint, you bringing in the literature and stuff that just shows that, yeah, this is what happened. This is the way it went. And how the information and oral history complemented each other to show that, yeah, this is the truth. You know, and I think that we as a band, as a tribal council, need to change the name to Zaga Wininiwag, Bands of Anishinaabeg. And also at the same time, change the seal, change it back to the original seal, because I did ask our executive secretaries to look for a resolution that authorized anybody to change that seal, and they couldn't find anything. So we need to go back to the original seal. But then the other thing too is the most important one too is we got to get those scrolls. We got to find those scrolls. And if we do find them, if we do locate them, let's say they are up in Canada, I would like to ask the tribal council that if we go to look at them and maybe even get them back, is that Fred be allowed to go along with. Thank you.
I don't believe that I would have came here with this information without wanting to make a suggestion. Kathy, you mentioned the Heritage Center. Eventually, if these, let's just say these scrolls were found, they'd have to probably wind up there. If you know anything about archaeology or how, you know, preservation of certain materials, hermetically sealed, there's got to be, you know, there's got to be temper controls on those things if you find them. In fact, I don't need, it would take an expert to unroll those things and then it would take, so it would take medicine men, somebody to be able to try and interpret those things beyond what Regan put in here, because I think this is Farmer John and the Indians back then did a damn good job of explaining those things. Now, my suggestion would be that you can't build a building without putting in a foundation. My suggestion would be, because I've worked on a number of these projects before, that the RBC, or T, you can't stay away from that damn term, the council would consider putting together for lack of a better term, a task force. Answerable only at this point to the council, all right? Because I've done some development projects like the Fond du Lac Community College and stuff, and working on that. We developed a task force there. The reason the task force is because there should be a number of different skill sets on a task force, like spiritual advisors, linguistics, or first speakers, or people who have some knowledge in archaeology, that you could put this task force together to just start dealing with, number one, funding sources. I know I've already didn't meet, I should say, informal kind of a conversation with the St. Louis County Historical Society. Their executive director said, yes, there could be funding for something like this. And when I mean funding, at some point in time, after the task force decides how this would go, or they would have to have some travel expenses. You might have to send somebody to Canada. Who the hell knows? You just don't know. But to develop an infrastructure under the control of the council, and I don't think it should go there any place but the council until such time as something is more codified. That's kind of the process I would use, and just make sure that the composition of that task force takes into consideration all of these different skill sets and cultural sets, linguistic sets, anything you can possibly put in there that would contribute to that task force getting to the bottom of this. That would be my only recommendation at this point, instead of just right away signing it over to Jalen should be on it. Whoever you think should be on it, chairman, president of whatever. Elders, of course, as much as you can combine in there that would be able to cover the whole gamut of things you would encounter. That's the only suggestion I have. I got a hold of Shane. I'm going to be, Kathy, I sound Kathy. I'm 80 years old. I don't know. I'm going to walk on tomorrow. Who the hell knows? But I was not going to allow this thing to not be given somewhere where someone could follow through on it. I would serve as a consultant, unpaid consultant, because I kind of know the roadmap of this thing, and that would be important. I would do that because I'm retired. I got nothing else to do. I would enjoy doing something like that. At least I have some of the history. I can point some of these things in the right direction, one way or the other. So that's the only consideration that I would ask you guys to have, is think about a task force of some sort. And then everything should fall into place.
I think that's an excellent idea, Fred, and I appreciate your offer to be a consultant because you've got a lot of history and knowledge there. We need to tap into that. And we need your expertise and assistance. So I think that's a great idea to develop a task force. So I think coming out of this discussion that we've had today, this historical knowledge that you've given us, and you know, I did ask also our attorney Jeff to view Mark Anderson's records. Mark was, you know, back in the day, was instrumental, and we're going to see if he has anything in his records at his office where Jeff is also in dealing with the logo and that information. So we will be in touch with you, and I think it's a great
This guy
idea.
over here in the corner, this attorney here?
Yes, that's Jeff Holt. He's our new attorney.
Hi, Jeff, I'm Fred. Call me anytime.
Nice to meet you, Fred. Thank you. I
And-
appreciate it.
And Shane, if you can give Jeff Fred's contact information. So if Jeff has any questions regarding specifically what he's looking for or whatever, that he can give Fred a call, and Fred we will be in touch with you. And
Sure.
again, I want to say Chi McWitch for the cultural and the historical aspect of the name and the logo. It's huge. That's who we are as people. And I appreciate your bluntness about the seal, and you know, its original meaning and intent. That's huge. It's huge.
Okay, thank you.
G. McGwitch. Okay. God, that was really uplifting. Very.
That was, I really liked that.
Yeah.
There's so much more meaning behind the logo than people think.
Yeah, for sure. And you know, it's amazing the thought and the cultural aspect that was put into it. So okay, last but not least, we do have Tracy Dagan on the agenda. And what she has is the vendor for the license plates. And Tracy, I gotta show him my license plate. Good morning, Trace. This is just a design, but Tracy put this one out there. So for those Vikings fans that can see that, a purple license plate that says school. So
I love the purple and gold.
I know you do. I want to put this up in my office, but I heard this is the only copy. You're gonna have to wrestle me for it anyway. But go ahead, Trace.
I got the final 5 plates that I'd like to have ordered because I'm down.
Okay.
The inventory is down on the regular standard plates, and I have a back order of personalized plates. And
Okay.
when I checked out the DOC, yeah, they are a little cheaper, but you have to have the plate design ready. They don't do any designing. Where
Okay.
with DE or which is HTX, he does a lot of designing. I mean, any little design thing that I wanted done, he went and did it right away. Like on the vet plate, he had DV for disabled vet, and
Yep.
we'll just have the regular vet plates. So I'd like to have the 5 plates approved so that I can get them ordered.
Yep. And also it was really interesting. The company, the person that owns the company actually came up here and talked with myself and a couple of us that were around. And for him to come all the way from Texas up here is huge. And he is also doing Red Lakes and Fond du Lacs and has some good idea for designs. He saw a design that he liked that was in a painting here, and we did get approval from Tara's father to okay that for a plate. She did speak to him about it, so that would be Ron Gijek. He's done a lot of beautiful artwork in the building. And so the plates, I think, like you mentioned, Trace, you do need to order some new ones, and you have I think are we going to do the MMIR instead of MMIW?
Yeah, the R for our
Yeah,
relative.
Yeah, MMIR, and then the two veterans plates, and also the two Boys Fort plates. So she gave us samples of those at our last meeting, and was asked to look at the DOC, and I was very impressed with this gentleman that came up. So do you guys have any questions on that?
There's a question on YouTube as far as can the tribe make license plates available for residents living off the reservation?
The only one I know who does that is Red Lake, and they don't, Red Lakers don't have to live on their reservation. They plate anybody anywhere. I could see us doing that. I could also not see us doing that. So it's up to the council, I would say.
Is there any kind of rules about that?
Well, I was just going to ask Jeff, because I don't see other tribes doing off reservation.
Yeah, Red Lake's one.
I know that we have to coordinate with the state to see if there's an exception that could be made. I mean, right now, Tracy, correct me if I'm wrong, but like the current policy provides a residency requirement for Boys Fort, right?
Correct.
Yeah, so I mean, it's easy to make an amendment, but we need to check on whether, just to make sure that we're not running into any conflicts with the state about licensing off reservation. If Red Lake can do it, there's probably a route to be able to get it done, but we should coordinate with the state just to make sure that we're all good. And then if it's an option, we can, bring it to council and you guys can make a decision.
Okay, we'll get in contact with the state on that issue. And then we'll get back to you on that, or whoever the individual was that was asking. We'll make sure we update on that issue. Okay, Tracy, what's the company's name that you wanted to go with?
Denuncius HTX.
HTX. Okay.
DENUCE. Oh wait, no. DENUECES HTX.
Okay, whatever. What she just said. Tara has her hand up. Go ahead, Tara.
I have just a few questions.
Sure.
Okay. Are we jumping the gun on this just because we had a discussion now about the logo, and the name and that sort of thing? So would we have to be changing this again in the future? I would also like a little bit more input from the community for discussion, for choices, rather than just the council. I had COVID, so I wasn't able to meet with the vendor or, see anything. I seen some sheets of paper and that kind of thing. So I'm just wondering, are we on a timeline for this because of?
Yeah, sort of, because I'm running low on my inventory.
Running low on plates.
Okay, so.
But you can order so much, right, Trace?
We could order as many as you want.
Yeah.
The more we order, the cheaper it will be.
Okay, I'm just wanting to make sure that what we order, if it's final, that that our community is pleased with what we have decided.
Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't even in the discussion about, my dad's painting or picture or whatever. So I was unaware of that until Kathy come and mentioned it to me quickly. I just would like a little bit more input even maybe just a small survey, we don't have to have. But if you want to move forward, because of the timeline, I'm thinking we could order a small batch of the old version.
That's the
then-
problem. That company went totally out of the license plate business. They're not doing license plates at all. Whatever signs they do, it was go for sign, whatever signage they do, they're still doing that part. They're just not doing license plates. So no, I do not have a vendor at all.
Okay, so HTX can't do our own logo that are the ones that we currently have on file? Or I'm just saying that I think we needed more input. And I don't know if the community feels that way also.
Maybe what we can suggest, because it sounded to me when the vendor came, he actually saw the painting that Moots did when he came in on Friday or Thursday. When was that, Trace?
Thursday, I think. Yeah.
Thursday he came up, and that's kind of, he just thought, oh my God, that would make a nice license plate. Tara was ill that day, and so you know, she didn't get a chance to really discuss it, but we did ask if her dad would be okay if, because he's designed all kinds of license plate for various tribes throughout the country, and you know, he did like some centennials and that type of thing, really cultural plates. But I would think that you know, like Tara's concern with the band seal now, and the other getting the band member input, that we could order a certain amount of plates. We may pay more, but we can always change that plate, right, Trace?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
we
it's
could
not
update
like it's
that.
set in stone. So
Yeah,
we can
order
order a
a-
small amount, but she needs plates.
Yeah, order a small amount, and if we do change everything, he would gladly change it with us, update with us, you know, so
Yeah,
that would
he's
be
there
no
for
problem.
customers. He's there for customer satisfaction. And he's really willing to work in any way possible with tribes.
Okay, that makes me feel much better, because I thought, well, this is a one and done, and that's the
No.
decision, and no changing it,
No.
you know? I'm
No,
like,
no.
and spending a lot of funds on, you know, on this decision is what I thought we were gonna do. Okay, thank you.
Just go with the purple and gold? No.
No. Shane wouldn't like that. Okay. Do we have a motion then to approve going with the vendor that Tracy recommends, whatever, Danushi HTX or whatever his name is? Do we have a motion? Moved by Shane. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Robert. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, silent, motion carried.
I was
Big
almost
wins,
gonna,
Trace.
I was almost gonna
Thank you.
second that
But-
myself.
Oh, okay, well, no other business. Very interesting meeting today. It was very educational and informational, and very, very good. I just want to say that we're hoping to have our meetings in person hopefully soon, and getting that set up. I'm hoping in October. We will be having some updates probably put on the website so we can get that information out there. And then with that, be safe, stay well. If you're sick, stay home.
Kathy, I just want to confirm that under Miranda other, that the Tracy Dagan discussion on the license plate, that was the only item?
Yeah, that was, yeah.
Okay,
Okay, yep, thank you, Tara. But with that, I want to say everybody be well, stay safe, and have a good week, and enjoy the rest of September, and pretty soon will be October. So Giga Wabaman,
Hey, Kathy,
Motion to
Yes.
adjourn?
wait, no,
there you go.
do we have a motion to adjourn?
Move.
Moved by Shane. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Robert. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, silent, motion carried. Geeko Weberman.
Overman,